curated by Jennifer Greichus, Head of Exhibitions in Arabs, is to introduce the wider public to the life and work of one of the great engineers of the late 20th century. And it consists of a spectacular vintage photography, including work by renowned photojournalist Mark Ribot, drawings, new and archival films and maquettes of important building designs. Traces of Peter Rice arrives in Dublin following his successful debut at the Arab Phase 2 in London. And for the Dublin exhibition, in addition, on display are a few key projects from RFR, the company that Peter Rice established in Paris in 1982, and some recently completed RFR projects in Ireland that illuminate the essential attributes of Peter Rice's legacy, namely collaboration, materiality and generosity of spirit.
I had the great good fortune to be in Paris at the Paris version of this exhibition, and when I look around me today I see it in a slightly different context, and it's a huge credit to everybody involved. I think you'll see the way everything is presented and the material that's here really gives you a strong insight into what the legacy that we have. A legacy that I believe will be, and certainly deserves to be, increasingly recognised as a unique contribution to an exceptional Irishman on modern world architecture, and I think nobody here could deny that. As a young architect, I was aware of Peter generally, but my awareness was heightened when the late Arthur Gibney proposed Peter for an honorary fellowship of the Institute of Architects in the late 80s. But most directly for me was the introduction to his legacy made to me by Buckles McAvoy, the winners of the competition for County Hall in February in early 1997. I was visited by Henry Bardsley at the time and Tom Gray, and out of that came the wonderful atrium that every day is a delight for us who are lucky enough to use the building as our workplace. The model of RFR has been in my office since that, and I was delighted to loan it as part of this exhibition. For my generation that saw colleagues spread their influence worldwide because of the emigration that happened with a lot of my colleagues, watching that particular talent we seem to possess innately as a nation to engender collaboration and exert influence in the subtlest of ways. The path of Peter's career is not too surprising, but that's not to diminish in any way his exceptional genius to develop solutions that had more than an element of surprise in every case, and the evidence is all around you. We're so proud in Fingal to have commissioned a structure conceived in tradition of Peter's work and of the Arab RFR legacy. It is the case that Irish architecture has been well served by the influence of the network of architects in many local authorities, and not least in the Office of Public Works either. My colleague's legacy deserves to be recognised, as it has promoted good design in towns and buildings in towns throughout the country where otherwise they wouldn't exist. I had the privilege to be in Paris at the exhibition in the Irish Cultural Centre, where I stood in awe listening to Renzo Piano speak so passionately and so clearly personally about Peter Rice's influence on his work. On the next day, in a series of contributions, we witnessed an emerging consensus on the much wider influence of the cadre of designers, with Peter as a key member, who through initially winning the design for the Centre Pompidou, caused a sea change in the approach to design on the European continent.
So who was Peter Rice? Well, he was born in Dublin. He grew up in Dundalk. As a boy, he always used to love numbers. He claimed that numbers for him had a magical quality. And I read somewhere that he didn't learn to read until he was almost 10. He claimed that when he left school, he got the highest mark in the year in his maths test, which was only bettered 3 or 4 years later when his brother, Morris, left school and got an even higher mark. So that was a bit of rivalry between the two of them. He turned down a place at Trinity College to go and study engineering at Queen's, apparently because his father thought that Queen's was a more serious place to study engineering in the 50s. He graduated and joined Arup in London in 1956. He never moved back to Ireland, so he spent the rest of his life partly in London, then he moved to Australia, he spent a little bit of time in the States, and then for the last 20 or 30 years he was moving between London and Paris, but always based in London. I'd say his first big project was when he moved to Sydney in 1963 as resident engineer on the Sydney Opera House. I was born in Australia, so I was born whilst he was working on it. And this was his first exposure to really innovative design. It was the first time, I think, that he realized how far as an engineer you could be pushed in support of the architect. The Opera House opened, I checked, and the Opera House opened on the 20th of October 1973, so almost exactly 40 years ago. And by the time it opened, my father was working on the Pompidou Centre in Paris, which was the other second big project of his career. The Pompidou Centre was a competition that he won as part of a design team with Richard Rogers and Renzo Piano. And this was the first project where he was really a key part of the design team right from the start. He did a lot of other projects. I tried to make a list of a few of the ones which I felt were the most significant. His first big project in France after the Pompidou Centre, which was the glass facades for the Science Museum at La Villette. This was his first project with RFR. He created RFR to do this project. The story that he used to tell us was that Arup had lost so much money on the Pompidou Centre that they vowed never to set foot in France again. And because he wanted to continue and he'd made the effort to learn French, he realised he had to create a company to do so. And so RFR was created, and their first project was the Cité des Sciences at La Villette. The Bari football stadium, so for the World Cup, he worked on the roof of the Bari football stadium. This gave him the opportunity to kick football on the pitch shortly before the World Cup. The Kansai Airport project, which was a huge, huge project. I think he was staggered by the scale of it more than anything else. The Lloyd's building in London. The De Menil Museum in Houston, Texas, which I worked on. Well, I worked on the site in my year off. And working is probably a big word for what I did. The Full Moon Theatre in Gogobès, which is well, it's part of the exhibition here, and it's a study of things you can do with moonlight. The main facade of Lille Cathedral, which was a project finished after his death. It's not often you get the opportunity to build a facade for a cathedral. And if you ever get the chance and you're in Lille, I highly recommend that you go and see it, because it's quite an amazing project. And the Queen's Stand at Epsom Racecourse. He loved horse racing. It was a passion he shared with Nemini, my little sister, and Sylvia. And I think he was very proud to work on this project as well. He was a partner at Arup, and obviously co-founder of RFR in Paris. He never actually worked in Ireland, so he never did any projects in Ireland, which I think was maybe because of the time he lived in and the opportunities that were here. I'm sure he would have loved to have had the opportunity, but it never occurred. He was a socialist. He voted Labour in the 1970s when the income tax rate was 85%. I remember coming to him once when I was working on a project on the construction of Euro Disney, and I found it quite difficult because the site was, at times it was quite toxic. There was a lot of pressure, and most people just weren't getting on with each other. And I came to him and I asked him, I said, what do you do in this situation? Who do you know who to trust? I get the feeling that some people aren't being honest with me. And he said, for me it's very simple. He said, I always trust people until they give me a reason not to. I remember him once telling me that the most important thing was having respect and being respectful to others. I remember him saying that if you have people's respect, that's the best. You can't do any better than that. And I think in his working life, he was always respectful to the people he worked with, whether they were very senior people or very junior people. He always listened. He was always interested in people's opinions. It was very important to him. He believed in teamwork. I don't think he would ever have said that any of the projects he did were his work alone. It was always shared. And he believed passionately in the role of the engineer as a designer alongside the architect. I remember him telling me once, he said the architect gives a subjective response, the engineer gives an objective response. The architect creates, the engineer invents. And for him, these were very different things, but completely complementary. His project in Ireland, which RFR did after he passed away, Fingal County Council headquarters, which was our first project in Ireland, which is a very, very important moment for me personally. I remember when we had the opportunity to do this project, and obviously my first thoughts were, God, Dad would have been proud. I mean, for sure. We then went on to work on the Limerick County Council headquarters, Kildare, Westmeath, development Elm Park, south of Dublin, for a developer, the Welcoming Pavilions at Leinster House for the Office of Public Works, Custom House Quay, which has been mentioned. And this was a kind of golden period in a way, because it was we found conditions here that we didn't find so easily elsewhere. I mean, there was good budgets, ambitious clients, talented young architects. It was a great place to work. And I'm very proud that we managed to do all these projects, and I'm sure my dad would have been proud as well. So it's a great honour for me to open this exhibition on behalf of the OPW. And as I say, I know my father would have been really, really proud to be here today and to see just how well his work has been recognised. Thank you very much.
There must be something about the spirit of generosity in the career and life of Peter Rice that has just entered the atmosphere, because the help and cooperation that we received in mounting this exhibition was exceptional. I would ask you to join with me in giving a round of applause, please, to this group of people: Peter Langford, Sean O'Leary, Kevin Barry, Sheila Pratchka and Philip O'Kane. I think that what Jennifer has achieved in her exhibition here in Traces of Peter Rice, in addition to, of course, the incredible engineering contributions that Peter Rice made, I think it's really interesting the iconic and vintage photography that's on show here, because these are artworks in their own right. And in reading Peter's work, he seemed to be quite fired up about how buildings and structures can be icons for a city. And of course we now know, and looking at some of the images here from the Manel collection, from Pompidou, you know, they've raised the profile of those places as well. So I think Jennifer's curating of this exhibition is very special in combining both the strength of Peter's own work and then how the work has been recorded over time. So congratulations again, Jennifer, and to Sharon O'Nick. My colleague Angela comes from the School of Peter Rice, and that she's one of our very, very generous colleagues. She's always there rooting for younger design colleagues to help them experience and send on her experiences to all of them. It's been a great pleasure for us at Farmleigh to work with her, and I think the RF4 Legacy Contributions of Peter Rice in Dublin is a very fine exhibition. So Angela, we have a small gift to note our thanks and congratulations.